It's the Netflix movie creating massive controversy.
Wait a minute, what about the other side?
Could meat be killing you?
You equated red meat to tobacco, and 1 egg equals 5 cigarettes.
Is it scare tactics?
You've got to tell them the truth.
Seriously, guys, stop for 1 second. That is not science, that's a lie, Travis.
No, I disagree with you.
The can't-miss debate that holds your health in the balance.
So when What the Health came out earlier this year, it had a really big impact on the way people viewed food, and as a result of that, a lot of people criticised it, including like Joe Rogan.
These guys lie.
And this pushback culminated in an epic debate on television on The Doctor Show. Check this out.
This is the most unscientific discussion I've ever had in my life.
Why don't we get,
Am I on the doctors or am I on some kind of show? Seriously, guys, stop for 1 second. That is not science, that's a lie, Travis.
And you had an obligation, I believe, Kip, as a director, to your viewers to change people's minds.
Well, I have an obligation to set the record straight so that people don't die. I'm a physician, I'm a pediatrician, I take care of obese children.
So this episode of The Doctor Show featured Dr. Robert Lustig, who is renowned for pushing his low-carb diet books and saying some outrageous things about food.
There is no foodstuff on this planet that has both fat and carbohydrate at the same time. It's one or the other, because that's evolution, that's nature, that's what God did.
I'm not sure about mentioning God and evolution in the same sentence, especially when talking about science and nutrition. But anyway, back to the epic debate.
This movie is an unabashed attempt to market a vegan diet to the American public. The question here is whether or not it's good from a metabolic standpoint and whether or not it causes disease or reverses disease.
Causes disease or reverses disease? This is another example of bias, the fact that they continually ignore the basic fundamental facts about plant-based nutrition. For example, that a plant-based diet has been scientifically proven to prevent or reverse 14 of the 15 leading causes of death in the West.
Can I just address your comment that we are patently false? Because I've got so much science to address that. So you say that sugar can't cause diabetes, but there was a recent meta-analysis, 16 studies. Sugar actually decreased the amount of diabetes in that meta-analysis. In the EPIC study, 500,000 people found 12 years replacing 5% of their fat with fructose, which Dr. Lustig hates like crazy, dropped their diabetes rate 30%.
Okay, so before we watch Dr. Robert Lustig lie in his response, let's just look at a scene from What the Health where they discuss sugar, just so we can get a little bit of context around what they're discussing.
Diabetes is not and never was caused by eating a high carbohydrate diet, and it's not caused by eating sugar. The cause of diabetes is a diet that builds up the amount of fat into the blood. I'm talking about a typical meat-based, animal-based diet.
They did a huge study in that EPIC study, 500,000 people. Carbs consumption was inversely related with diabetes. In other words, the more carbs someone ate, the less diabetes they had. But meat was strongly correlated. Get that aha moment. The starches, the carbs are good for you. They're not bad for you.
If I eat a sugary cookie, the sugar lures you in like the Trojan horse, but waiting inside that cookie is a huge load of butter or shortening, and that's what fattens you up, and that's the part that leads to the diabetes. It's the fatty foods, not really so much the sugar.
Turns out that there are 34 studies where 33 of them say there's no effect, and they're all paid for by the sugar industry. There's only one that says there is. When you look at the ones that are independently funded, 26 of them say there is an effect of sugar in diabetes. So you have to take those meta-analyses and use as a cofactor whether it was industry-sponsored or not. The EPIC study did not.
The EPIC study did show that
did not.
But this gets back to me, if I can
clearly showed that animal protein caused diabetes.
But this is where, Dr. Davis, to not acknowledge that, okay, if we're going to say industry-funded studies are a bad thing when it comes to eating meat, but then we're going to say industry-funded studies.
They think they've caught Dr. Garth Davis out, but unfortunately to them, they really haven't. Travis is basing what he just said on Dr. Robert Lustig's lie. The bottom line is that Dr. Garth Davis does not support industry-funded studies.
None of the studies I mentioned were industry-funded, and I never, ever mention industry-funded studies.
And next up, they talk about eggs and whether they think they're healthy.
1 egg equals 5 cigarettes. And that was kind of the hyperbole where you just lump everything together.
Everyone I've seen who's tried to debunk What the Health has had issues with claims about eggs. Let's see how Dr. Garth Davis responds.
Do you know that study?
Correct. I went back and I read.
So
and
where
I
was
actually,
that study from?
So
it was from
I read
Harvard, from the health profession study, and from the Women's Nurses Health Study.
Correct, but
using a comparative analysis, comparative risk analysis. It was a non-industry funded study, and that's real science.
Walt Willett, who's the chair of the Department of Nutrition at Harvard School of Public Health, where I did my public health degree,
Willett.
basically has done a study that shows that people who consume eggs don't have a higher risk of mortality. Another study just came out with 44,000 people that showed all-cause mortality was less in people who consumed one egg per day. But that wasn't Iran. It wasn't funded by industry.
This is getting really, really hectic, but I think the key thing, I just want to repeat a clip just to make it clear what everyone's talking over each other. I just want to make it clear what's going on here. She does say it is not an industry-funded study.
It wasn't funded by industry.
That was an egg industry-funded study.
No,
you guys are going to talk about
But the point is that you can cherry-pick different.
If you look at the study in question, you can see the sources of funding because it's available for public view. 2 sources from the egg industry. This is completely irresponsible. This is the 3rd person on this stupid show to be lying. This is meant to help people's health, and it's complete nonsense.
Funded by industry.
That wasn't. I actually have friends who are vegan, and all they eat are processed sugary foods, and they are not healthy.
No.
So firstly, they lied, and now they're taking things out of context. Of course, a vegan diet could be unhealthy. Oreos, some donuts are vegan. We all know they're unhealthy, but this is not what the film was talking about. The film was recommending a whole food, plant-based diet.
And we get thousands, if not 10,000s of emails and comments across the board that within not even months, within weeks and months of watching the film, going whole foods, plant-based, they're reversing their diabetes, they're getting off their medications, they're feeling better than they ever have. And that's called doing a public service.
So that's what Kip was, there to do. He was the film producer, he's not a medical doctor, he was never going to come in as the high-flying scientist. But he was just there to provide a little bit of anecdotal evidence and just say, hey, I've received so many emails from people after watching the film, and the film has changed a lot of people's lives.
It's What the Health movie.
Isn't that incredible?
Driving the world crazy. Everyone's vegan now.
My fiance watched this documentary called What the Health.
A new documentary on Netflix has many people questioning their diets.
And now we're vegans.
And if you look at Lewis Hamilton a couple of months ago, he watched the film and then he went vegan about 3-4 weeks ago, and now he's just won the 4th F1 championship. So, this is changing hearts and minds, people.
Plant-based diet you've gone on to.
I can't express to you how amazing I feel.
It felt to me like it was just talking to doctors on one side who had one perspective. And so as much as I love the documentary, I kept saying, wait a minute, what about the other side?
Don't you think that you made this movie with a little bit of bias? I mean, don't you think that you, as a vegan for 10 years, it was sort of swayed in that direction?
They're trying to accuse the filmmaker Kip and Dr. Garth of having some kind of vegan ethical bias and being swayed by that. But why are they not talking about the bias everyone, including the doctors on the stage, have because of the financial incentives? Why are they not shining a light on what the film tried to highlight about the corruption within industry? That's where the bigger bias is.
We have shown that if you take sugar out of kids' diets and replace it with starch, their insulin resistance went away. The atherogenic particle called small dense LDL disappeared. Their triglycerides were cut by 46%. We have causation. This isn't correlation, Dr. Davis. All of your studies that you have mentioned are all correlative, not causative. This is causation.
Again, this is a lie. If you read any of Dr. Garth Davis's work, he provides causation-based studies to back up the correlation, often population-based studies that he cites.
You said in the movie that sugar does not cause diabetes. It is an out-and-out falsehood.
Hey, can I ask you something, Dr. Lustig? How did your control group do in that study?
The control group was the patients themselves.
You didn't have a control group.
That's right, because you couldn't have a control group.
Listen.
All Lustig could say here is, oh no, we couldn't have a control group. But if you actually read the study, they had 9 boys coming into hospital for a while, and they were given like dietary tweaks. It would have been pretty simple to have a control group where people came to the hospital and weren't given those dietary tweaks.
How did you get how many calories you're going to feed the children?
We used a specific equation called the Harris-Benedict equation, and then increased that by 10%.
So you asked the kids what they ate, and you gave them the same amount of calories they told you they ate, which was actually a calorie deficit diet,
It was not a calorie deficit diet because
how
they
many calories
maintained
did you
their
feed
weight.
them? 1,600 calories, right?
We fed them 2,400 calories per day.
You fed them 1,600 calories in your paper.
This is a perfect
And for 2,400 calories.
You fed them 1,600 calories.
We did not. We did not. We have the data.
This is absolutely academic.
You don't have the data. We have the data.
I've got the data.
This is getting really, really heated. I don't know if you know that these two were actually at an event together a couple of months ago called the Plantrition Project. I was going to go, but how cool would it be to get these two in the same room with a camera, like a sit-down round the table debate? I've got to do that next year. Anyway, back to the TV debate. They next talk about cancer.
When I say that there are a lot of studies linking meat to cancer, there are a lot of studies. So in 2004, the American Institute of Cancer Research, the World Health Organization, and the World Cancer Research Fund did a humongous study, and you got to read the prologue, because they say we have differences of opinion, but the opinions we put here are unanimous. After reviewing 800 studies, we tell you to only eat 2/3 of a serving of meat a week. In Okinawa, they have 80% of their calories from carbohydrates. 80%.
But they eat meat.
They eat pork once every 2 to 4 weeks.
You were so off on the science, in my humble opinion, because you say sugar doesn't cause diabetes and that carbohydrates don't cause people to be fat, and then you use science and you said that 80% of Okinawans eat rice as their primary carbohydrate. No. That's just not true.
Okay, so here Travis is lying again. Dr. Garth Davis said 80% carbs and not rice.
In Okinawa, they have 80% of their calories from carbohydrates. This is the most unscientific discussion I've ever had in my life.
Why don't we get, am
I on the doctors or am I on some kind of show? Seriously, guys, stop for 1 second. That is not science, that's a lie, Travis.
What I love about Dr. Garth Davis is he's not afraid to speak out. I've seen him do this at an event before.
When I say wrong, they're flat out wrong.
I mean, this guy has not studied diabetes in depth. It's very obvious.
Travis, I can make you diabetic right now with a euglycemic clamp and an infusion of fat.
You can't make those statements and then expect the scientists to agree with you.
Tons of science to support it.
Next, Dr. Garth Davis is really shocked that the doctors on this TV show are recommending class 1 and class 2 carcinogens ranked by the World Health Organization. As Dr. Garth says in his blog, this is completely absurd.
So the incidence of colorectal cancer is 5%. Even causing this, causing processed meats 50 grams a day increases the risk by 18%. That takes you to 6%. It's not a huge risk. And I think when you take these numbers out of context and you cherry pick the studies, it can be very scary to people, and it's a very confusing landscape.
It should be scary. Hold on 1 second. We have an absolute epidemic of colon cancer showing up in younger and younger people. And you don't think that we need to tell people?
And next, she accuses him of cherry picking.
Dr. Davis, we all know as physicians that there are so many studies out there and everyone can cherry pick.
This is a good time to play what Kip says, which is provides a little bit of sanity.
It's not cherry picking, it's essentially painting for gold in a murky river of industry funded studies like that, and it took a long time to find this. The bottom line is that eggs cannot legally even be called safe.
So why is the World Health Organization studying 900 studies and they're cherry picking?
Let me know what you thought of this debate. I thought it was pretty funny. Somebody emailed me and prompted me to make this video. I also saw the Happy Healthy Vegan video about this. Check it out, I'll link that down below. Ryan did a really good job. But the email I got was, this was one of the most brutal deconstructions of anti-vegan pseudoscience by Dr. Garth Davis. But what do you think? I think he did a good job. I think they were really unfair to him. He didn't really have a lot of time to speak. If you watch some of his clips back, his voice is breaking. You know, when you're in front of loads of people and you're like TV, often you crumble a little bit. I don't think he crumbled, but I think he had such little time to explain to them the complex science. And I don't know, man. Do you think it'll be good for like this plant-based movement or not? Let me know down below. And what is your favorite kind of epic nutrition debate? Personally, mine was from a few years ago. There was one between Dr. Dean Ornish and Dr. Robert Atkins.
Well, first of all, let me say that I would love to see some data from Dr. Atkins showing that he can actually get reversal of heart disease, measuring the underlying disease process.
Well, we're working on it.
Well, good. I'd
but
love to see it.
We're not as good a fundraiser as you are. We have to dig into our own pockets. That's the problem.
I'm sorry. Carolyn, can I address that issue?
I think with the number of books you've sold, you could probably fund your own studies.
Just because it was brought out about Dr. Atkins' claim to reverse heart disease. And he said he's working on the data, but he's been making this claim for a long time.
No, I haven't.
And that's what Excuse me.
But I haven't been making that claim.
You just did, and you don't have the evidence to back it up. Now, this diet's been out there for 30 years, or close to 30 years.
And I haven't been able to fund a study. I've asked and asked.
Excuse me. 10 million books in print, and you can't fund the study?
Now I can. And I will be the first doctor to dig into his own pocket to do a study. And it will be me, but it was the first time I had a
10 million books. You market the vitamins. You sell the vitamins to correct the nutritional deficiencies.
That's true. That's why I'm doing a study now.
I keep saying...
That's why I couldn't do it before.
You market this. I say this is not for the public good. This is marketed. This is a money-making proposition.
Anyway, thank you so much for watching, guys. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more plant-based news.